Let us start with some basic facts about population aging. As I said, population aging is happening all across the world, and this is partly because of the fact that more of us are now living longer and are healthier in our old age. And this rise in longevity is largely because of advancements in medicine, in technology, and in public hygiene. Now, at this moment, we have close to 900 million people aged 60 and over living across the world, and by 2050, this would be almost doubled in proportions, and in numbers, there will be close to 2 billion older people living across the world. The population aging amongst the oldest age, those are aged 80 and plus, is happening at a much faster rate. The rate of population change in this group is such that now we have close to 500,000 centenarians, and by 2050 we will have close to 2 million centenarians living in this world. But the proportions doesn't tell the total story. In fact, in African region, by 2050 we will have in excess of 200 million people aged 60 and over. At this moment, Japan is the only country in which we have 1/3 of the population aged 60 and over, and by 2050, close to 58 countries will have population in excess of 30% aged 60 and over. The rate of demographic change is different across many parts of the world. For example, the fast emerging economies like Brazil, India, Mexico, they are observing the change in older population at a much faster rate than has been observed in other countries. Brazil, for instance, will double its population, which would be 5.5 times faster than the same phenomenon happened in France. Many of the governments across the world are facing these challenges that they need to put in place policy frameworks to address the needs of older population. And in particular countries, African countries, Middle Eastern countries, and Asian countries are falling short in matching the needs of older people. They need to put in place good policies such as universal social protection and good social services required by older people. What becomes extremely important that we understand the potential and the resources that older people are, that we need to put in place social policies that would promote the usefulness of older people living in our societies. Japan is one example that in 1960s, Japan put in place comprehensive welfare policies, universal coverage of health and social pensions. And today, despite the fact that Japan is one of the only countries where more than 30% of the population is age 60 and over, it is one of the healthiest and wealthiest countries in the world. Let's now look at how the UN Development Goals announced earlier this year also gives importance to older people being part of the development process. To start with, these goals pledge that the development process should not leave anyone behind. People of any age or any ability, they should all be part of the development process. This is one of the strongest pledges of those goals. At the same time, it is being recognized increasingly in the formulation of these UN goals that older people should become a resource in the process of development. So not only that all development processes should have older people at their heart, but also older people themselves become the net contributors in such development. The population group of 80 plus, 80 and over, are growing at a much faster rate. So we have close to 500,000 centenarians now, but in the next 30 or 40 years, we will have close to 2 million centenarians living in the world. Also, we need to be aware of the fact that there are other social development processes that are happening. For example, urbanization is happening at a much faster rate across the world. Urbanization and aging are two phenomena that go hand in hand, and thus it has become very important that aging and health are taken into consideration in all future policy developments. Another phenomenon is that because we have in the population a greater proportion of older people, then they have also greater voting power. And then there is a risk that there will be a population conflict, that older people will only vote for those issues that benefit them. But in fact, there is no such evidence that older people only vote for those issues that benefit that group of older people. In fact, they also vote in favor of other issues which benefit younger generation. Of course, there is also the warning that countries that will fail to put in place suitable policies will face the challenge that older people will become increasingly dependent on the resources of that society. Thus, suitable adjustments, suitable timely policy adjustments are required so that we continue to make the best use of older people in their old age and not let their frailty make them dependent on other people and other resources. Two pieces of work I want to point out here, which I think are extremely important readings. One is the Global Age Watch Index work of Help Age International that gives us a good sense of well-being of older people living across the world. It gives us a sense of how people are receiving pension income, how they are in terms of health, and what employment and education opportunities they have, and what age-friendly enabling environment they have. So the Global Age Watch Index gives us a good sense of in which context older people do well, and what can other countries learn from the policies in the countries that perform better in terms of well-being of older people. The second piece of work, which is done mostly for European countries, points to the active aging potential of older people. In this, we see how engaged and productive older people are, how healthy they are, how secure and independent lives they are living, and this also gives us a sense of healthy aging that older people are enjoying in different countries. And it also gives us, it points to the policies that promotes active and healthy aging in old age. The basic facts of population aging that we all need to be aware of. And one of the facts that we all should be aware of is that population aging is happening in all regions across the world. It is happening at a much faster rate in developing countries than in developed countries. And that is why some commentators are saying that developing countries are growing old before getting rich.